The off-roader that divided the automotive world into before and after, has almost turned 22 years old. Today, every luxury brand and major supercar manufacturer has their own crossover, but they all followed the path paved by the first Porsche Cayenne. It was the Cayenne that made the Aston Martin DBX, Lamborghini Urus, and even Ferrari possible. However, it could have turned out very differently if the Cayenne hadn't been such a capable and commercially successful vehicle. The introduction of the first-generation Porsche Cayenne divided the brand's fans into two camps and caused significant upheaval within the company. Cayenne was somewhat of a bastard, the child of Porsche and Volkswagen. But in reality, it was a car that led the brand into a new era of success and immense profits. Let's remember the circumstances surrounding its birth. Porsche was ready to release an off-roader as early as the 1950s. Yes, it was just an unsuccessful project for a military vehicle for the Bundeswehr, but let's not forget that the Mercedes-Benz G-Class and Jeep Wrangler were also born in a similar way. The Porsche 597 Jagdwagon with an engine from the 356 Coupe lost in the tender to the more economically viable DKW Munga developed by Auto Union, but Porsche didn't give up hope of building another vehicle of this kind. Ferrari Porsche also showed interest in the Range Rover that appeared in the 1970s. The company seriously considered creating a similar vehicle on an elevated Porsche 911 chassis, but they never had the money or resources for it. Big plans, small company. In the end, dreams materialized in the racing Porsche 953, which won at Dakar, and a range of all-wheel drive Porsche 911 Carrera for models. In the mid-1990s, the company's dire financial health began to improve. The new boss, Wendelin Wiedeking, later ousted by Ferdinand Piëch, implemented a reorganization. Measures were taken to manage and produce more efficiently, and the model range underwent radical changes. In order to save costs, the new Porsche Boxster and 911 were unified by about 50%. After the release of the confusing Porsche 944 and 968, the brand once again began producing modern products and returned to profitability in 1995. Wiedeking's focus was now on the future, on the growing crossover segment. In the 1990s, the popularity of SUVs skyrocketed, especially in the United States, which was Porsche's largest market. Finding the funds for their own crossover in the 2000s wouldn't have been difficult, but in the 1990s, the company only had enough money for half of such a car. Just like when they introduced the PDK transmission 10 years earlier, Porsche had only one way to bring the project to fruition: find a strategic partner to share the costs of engineering and production. And Mercedes-Benz was first on the list, as they were looking to replace the G-Wagon with a successful model in the United States, but ultimately pursued a completely different project, the ML crossover. Fortunately, Porsche bosses could easily take a taxi to Mercedes' office, so active negotiations began between the two Stuttgart-based companies. However, they quickly reached an impasse. Daimler saw Porsche not as a participant in a joint project with their own share and areas of responsibility, but as an external buyer of their platform, which would allow them to reduce its cost. The next logical step was to turn to Volkswagen, whose CEO at the time was Ferdinand Piëch, Ferdinand Porsche's grandson. The complex family relationships within the Porsche tree had led to both positive and catastrophic consequences at different times, but this time it was very opportune. Porsche and Volkswagen could share the costs of the Cayenne and Touareg models without directly competing with each other, at least until the Audi Q7 was introduced. By the time the joint venture was announced in 1998, Porsche was still a small independent company producing 38,000 cars per year. Today twice as many Cayennes are produced alone. The company, in theory, was supposed to take a leading role in the development of crossover platforms, but it simply didn't have enough engineers for that. At the same time, the factory in Zuffenhausen was overloaded with the growing demand for the new Porsche 911 with the 996 index. Porsche had to open an additional office between Weissach and Stuttgart and build a new factory, which was initially designed to produce only 20,000 cars per year. In order to reduce production costs, the factory was deliberately built in Leipzig, East Germany, where labor was cheaper. When it appeared on the market, the Porsche Cayenne became not just the newest and most atypical model of the brand, but also the most profitable and criticized one. This model changed the entire structure of the company and, ultimately, its fate. In the mid-2000s, Porsche was no longer struggling with losses, but almost absorbed the entire Volkswagen Group.